Hi, this is Stephanie with BigDogMom.com. I am here with Scott J. Marshall II, who is the dog dad. Many of you know him from his very popular Facebook group, Raw Feeding 101, and the Dog Dad channel on YouTube. So welcome, Scott. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this interview. It has been a couple of weeks in the making. It's like we both have crazy schedules or something.
I know. I apologize. Yeah, we've had to reschedule a couple of times. So
yes, we have both been on my end too, not just you. So
I did have one other video with Kimberly from Keep the Tail Wagging, and I felt so bad because the dogs were downstairs, and so I just looked like the crazy big dog lady with no dogs in the room. So I made sure that for this video I have both dogs, although you can't see Sally. Junior is back there.
Proof.
Yeah, so hopefully they will come alive from their slumber during our interview. But I just wanted to start so by first of all thanking you for coming. The other thing I wanted to talk about, just a little, give me a little background. So kind of how did you get started? I know you've talked about it on the Dog Dad channel, and you've talked about it in your Facebook group, Raw Feeding 101. But give the Big Dog Mom audience just a little bit of a taste of kind of how you got started in the raw feeding world.
Okay, so as far as like why we started raw feeding, or how Dog Dad started, or both?
Yeah, why don't you do both? Actually, give me a sense, because I'm sure the raw feeding of the dogs started first, and then yeah, kind of how you sort of saw a need in the marketplace. Yes. Okay. And here's Junior. Oh.
So further proof that she does in fact have big dogs, heads bigger than hers.
Yeah, right.
So how we started raw feeding was, and actually if you want a super detailed look with all the info, you can go to rawfeeding101.com, and at the very top of the page is like my raw feeding story and how I started, why, all that. But the short version is that when we were living together, my now wife and I, several years ago before we got Wolken, we were about to take a trip to Alaska, leave everything behind, and go and work for a cruise company that I had spent several years with previous to us dating. And we'd already accepted the jobs and everything, but we had a breeder that we had been talking to, a German Shepherd breeder, and it was just like, you know, stars aligned, all that kind of stuff. And a week or so before we were scheduled to leave, right before we were buying our plane tickets, basically, we got a message from her saying, hey, I know that we've been talking for like a year, and I have a dog that has basically their original owner isn't allowed to have them anymore. They moved into a new home that had an HOA that didn't allow German Shepherds, or it was a weight limit or something. And so unfortunately, Wolken spent the better part of 4 months, other than getting out to go to the bathroom, from what I understand, in a kennel on the side of somebody's house. And I'm not talking about a dog run. I'm talking about a kennel that's like, you know, 3 by 4 feet maybe. So he was basically squished and laying down for months. It was so bad that when I got his kennel, when we adopted him and said, yes, we want him, that I thought that his kennel was rusted through because it was all brown. But what I came to find, it was just mud from like front to back. I'm like, okay, well, now I feel even better about this decision. Yeah. So we naturally got to the question of, okay, what are we going to feed this dog? And asked around in German Shepherd groups on Facebook. And a friend, a now friend, suggested and said, have you ever considered feeding raw? And like any other person that's hearing about it for the first time, I was like, well, what the heck is that? And that just sent me down the rabbit hole. Spent close to a year researching it before we finally, well, the plan had always been to get a dog before the Wolken thing happened, because we were looking into German Shepherds. Mm-hmm. And this conversation happened long before the Wolken thing happened. And so by the time that we actually started Wolken on raw, I'd been researching for about a year. And then it just progressed when we got his brother, Horace, from the same people, actually got him fresh from the breeder. So we have one adoption dog and one, you know, bought. Are
they related? Dog. Do they have any of the
same? They are same parents. They're only separated by 1 litter, which is crazy because they couldn't be more different. One is super slim and lean, and the other one is a big tank of a dog. One's impossible to put weight on. The other one is really hard to not have weight gain on. I mean, like, they're so they're so different, even though they're raised in identical environments by identical people, nearly identical diets. It's hilarious. It's a true testament to the outcome of genes and dogs. You know, those two dogs get together and each puppy has a potential combination of those genes coming together. So fast forward several years before I start ranting like I promised I wouldn't do. Fast forward several years, and I went through this big personal transformation and lost a bunch of weight, and was like, okay, well, this part of my life is improving. You know, what else can I improve in my life? And I decided that I didn't want to spend my life in a 9-to-5 job, because my base personality is that I absolutely loathe and detest anybody telling me what to do anytime for anything. And so 9-to-5 just really never fit with me. And so I started doing some online stuff, publishing some books on Amazon, and came to find out about a year later, and it was about some gluten-free stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, so what was that? Wasn't raw feeding?
No, it was gluten-free fitness, and I spent pretty much all of 2016 building that. And at the end of 2016, after making lots of friends, lots of business connections, mentors, etc., I came to this conclusion after the conversation with a friend that I'm not passionate about this. Like, I have to be gluten-free because of allergies, etc., but this is not something that excites me and makes me passion filled, etc. So then I came back to the dog stuff, because the first book that I actually published, even before the gluten-free stuff, was this little 81 dog foods or not book. And it's super teeny tiny. It's just like 81.
Oh my goodness. And you
like
wrote that? Oh yeah, you did. I see your name at the bottom.
Yeah, what's funny though is that, I don't know if you can see it, but it says, this is a proof copy before I actually published it, and it says Scoot J. Marshall. So yeah, we had to fix that before we made it go live, but it's
that
just
is classic.
Yeah. It just has 81 dog foods, like household stuff. You know, is it safe to feed? Is it sort of safe to feed? Should you absolutely stay away from it? And I came full circle back to that stuff. So I started with the dog book, said, I don't want to do dog stuff because I'm too passionate about it and it works me up, into doing the gluten-free stuff, back to the dog stuff, because I realized, the dog stuff is what I should be doing because it's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And that led into all of it. The creation of the Raw Feeding Group, Raw Feeding 101, the creation of the Dog Dad business, which all led to the creation of the Raw Feeding 101 course. And as far as what came first, it's a little bit tricky of an answer, because the Raw Feeding 101 group was actually originally a group that I made for a raw feeding app that I made back in 2014. And it was a free app that I put out through my 9-to-5 job at the time. And so all I had to do was basically plug and play content, and it didn't go anywhere. I mean, I had thousands and thousands, like the last time I checked, it was like 14,000 downloads on it or something like that. But the group that was attached to it, that the Raw Feeding 101 group is now, didn't go anywhere. It was like 350, 400 people after several years. And one day after I made the switch back to dogs and Dog Dad was born, etc., I was like, okay, I'm repurposing this group and I'm turning it into what I think that it should be, which is a positive, non-judgmental, we will boot you if you are, place to have raw feeding conversations where people can actually come together and support each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, it exploded. We went from 400-ish members at the beginning of 2017 to, we were past, I'm pretty sure by the end of December, we were past 11,000, something like that.
Yeah, so it's 14,000, I think now, isn't it?
Yeah, almost 15. It just went like,
it's crazy. Yeah, and the funny thing is, rarely do I get on the forefront of anything, so I'm usually like way after the fact and like telling people about movies 10 years after they happen. But yeah, I was the sub 1,000 of the Raw Feeding 101, so I feel pretty proud that I had the in and have been a part of the group. And I think you're right. I think it definitely is a forum for just a very open place for people to ask questions, to learn. And that is severely lacking, I think, in many of the groups where, I mean, and I've told you this before, where I've asked an innocent question, and I'm not new to raw feeding by any stretch, but, you know, asking a simple question and then just getting bombarded with negativity and how dare you ask and how dare you even consider doing that, and just something so silly that it's nice to have a place where anybody is free and welcome to ask any question. And really the goal, like you said, is just for people to learn and for people to do better by their dogs, and through nutrition. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. Pretty much a zero tolerance policy for that kind of stuff. You know, there's a fine line sometimes when you're looking at what it is between a passionate discussion and attacking somebody needlessly. And if you're on that side of the fence, you're gone. I'm not concerned about having more members in my group. Like, I'm not going to be, you know, hurt by the fact that I lost a member. If you're bad for the community and you make people feel bad about themselves and what they're doing, you're gone. I have no use for you. Bye-bye.
There's other groups that would probably welcome you. So
yes. Plenty of them. There's no shortage of groups on Facebook.
No, there's not. Yeah, that's funny. Well, I think that gives us a good backdrop. I mean, I'm curious, you know, you and I both, as I would consider really veteran raw feeders. I mean, I've been raw feeding Sully. Maybe I'm not really a veteran. You're maybe more of a veteran raw feeder than I am, but I've been raw feeding Sully. He's 3.5, almost 4 years old. So that's about the extent. And I raw fed a little bit the previous dog that we had. So not new to raw feeding myself, but I'm curious from your perspective and from the vast audience that you have, what are maybe just a couple of the reasons that you would say people should consider raw feeding, just from a very basic, you know, just if you think of nothing else, these are kind of the 3 biggest reasons that you should consider raw feeding. And then what are maybe a couple of the reasons that you think people don't do it? Like, what are the big sticking points? What are maybe just 2 or 3? There's probably a whole host, but maybe give me 2 or 3. Yeah, right.
We could do a whole 30-40 minute video on just that question alone. But doing my best not to ramble here, because I have a horrible yet great habit of doing that, depending on how you look at it. But the biggest reasons for me for why you should, at the very least, even if you don't end up doing it, because it's all a personal choice and no one can tell you what to do with your dog.
Yep.
You know, obviously, unless you're like an animal abuser and the cops show up and take your dog from you, that's very different. But besides that, no one can tell you what to do with your dog. So at the very least, what I think people should consider when they look into it is that it is not, there's no discussion about this anymore. I mean, unless it is just people being bought and paid for by certain organizations, there's no argument scientifically left anymore that kibble is a species appropriate diet, even though certain companies are trademarking terms like biologically appropriate, which they're not. It's just not. It is not what a dog was designed to eat. And I know this is a ridiculous analogy, but it's one thing that it's so ridiculous that it finally makes things click in some people's heads. And that's, you know, 100 years ago, even 200 years ago, whatever. Do you really think that your dog was hunting down bags of kibble? And like the picture of this bag of kibble with arms and legs running through the forest is absolutely absurd, but that is the
nothing natural about it.
Yeah, there's nothing natural about it. We don't even need to go into the subpar quality of the ingredients that go into it, but just the makeup of what it is. It's not what dogs are supposed to eat. So that's thing number 1 for me, is it's not what they're designed for. Look at everything. In my eyes, I like to look at the dog as, and this comes from the book, How Dogs Work, that they're like a biological machine. And everything about them screams predator, hunter, meat eater. Their bodies, you know, from their head to their tail are designed to maintain balance and pivot really quickly, and they have claws for traction, all these kinds of things for hunting, etc. You look at their jaw structure, their teeth, everything says, I'm a carnivore, I'm supposed to hunt things, and I'm supposed to eat other animals, and that's just how it is. And to argue anything otherwise is simply trying to support the financial interests of somebody on the other side of that coin. There's no argument about it anymore. And I have an alarm going off. I apologize.
No worries. I thought it was actually an ambulance in the background. not your phone. I actually didn't think that's what that was. Yeah, I think, you know, maybe even a good comparison would be just kind of what you're saying is think about our own diets. Do we think that it's appropriate or healthy for us to be eating processed foods as our sole foundation of our diet? No, we know we're supposed to have dairy and meat potentially if you're not a vegetarian or a vegan. Vegetables, fruits, we know that we have to vary our diet and to have natural food sources, not just a bag of Cheetos, even though that may be what we feel like eating. That's what we want to eat, but we know that that's not appropriate for us.
Right.
So it's no different with our dogs, that they can't be eating a bag of Cheetos and then you expect them to be healthy and to live a long life, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And the big difference is that we get to make that choice. We get to say yes or no to the bag of Cheetos, and the dog just gets to either accept the bag of Cheetos or the bowl of fresh food because they got zero choice in this situation.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Transitioning from Cheetos into the only other thing, without going on a rant, that I would say is why people should consider it, is the processed food, more directly to the fact of carbohydrates. People like to anthropomorphize their dogs in more than one way, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that unless we talk about behavior issues, et cetera, because I do it. I try not to. I try to look at them as much as I can as dogs and what's going on in their brain and what makes sense for them, but I still anthropomorphize them and make them into people in my head. Right. And when you look at it that way, if you compare, look at us, all of our doctors, all the marketing, everything that's going on with human food right now is saying less processed food, more fresh food, more real food, because it's healthier for you. It's what your body wants. It creates health, longevity, etc. So with the mass of the population wanting to anthropomorphize their dogs and turn them into people in their heads, why do you think that your dog is indifferent? Why is it okay for your dog to have a diet consisting of 50% sugar / carbohydrates, and it's not okay for you? It's not okay for your dog either. It's not okay. And that leads to a plethora of problems. Obesity, which has its own list of issues like joint problems, cardiovascular issues, diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, the list just goes on and on. Everything that you can think of that you would experience in a bad way from a diet of processed food, bad teeth, weight problems, etc., your dog's going to experience all the same things at an accelerated rate because they're smaller and they have shorter lifespans. So, and I guess that's thing number 3 would be that they don't live as long because of things like cancer and etc. So those are the, without rambling, those are the why I think people should consider it, and the why people don't do it, why I think that people that even consider it don't end up doing it, is because of 2 main factors, which you hit exceptionally well in your recent blog post, that from your survey, which was a great idea. Number 1 being really what we were saying here before the call started, was that people don't end up feeding their dogs a raw or fresh food diet because they think ultimately, if we can boil it down to one sentence, that they're going to spend a lot of money to make their dog sick, which couldn't be further from the truth. If you are willing to go through the time, I like to think of this thing as like the cost equation, and I talk about this a little bit in one of the videos in the course, but it's that the more creative that you are and the more time that you're willing to put into it, the less you will spend. The less creative that you want to be and the less time that you want to be, less amount of time that you want to put into it, the more you're going to spend. It's no different than anything else. Do you want to put in the DIY time and effort to spend less, or do you want to spend more and have the convenience? It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And on the bacteria and getting sick thing, I mean, I actually have a video that's publishing today about this, but it is so ludicrous to me, the amount of scare tactics and fear mongering that certain companies are using, because
it's off the charts.
Yeah, a little bit of a spoiler alert. And unless you get this video edited really fast, it's kind of a spoiler alert.
Well, if I don't make any mistakes, it'll go out today. Yeah.
But that video basically sums it up like this. Everything from the point of, let's just use the analogy that I use in the video. If you're looking at a bag of frozen hamburger, you could be doing one of 2 things with it, right? You could either be about to cook tacos for you and your wife or your family, or you could be about to use that in a part of your dog's meal, right? And everything, and I mean everything, from the point where you take it out of the freezer to you're preparing it, cleanup, sanitation, all of it, hand washing, everything is identical, other than the fact that one of them goes into your dog's bowl, which just creates one more dish to clean and that's it, or it goes into the oven or into the pan on your stove. Other than that, it's identical. And let me ask you.
It's the same food.
Exactly. It's like, when was the last time that you got E. coli or salmonella from cooking a turkey dinner for Thanksgiving, or making tacos for your family, or grilling on the grill? And I mean, it doesn't happen, because all you have to do is practice common sense sanitation things. And that's not to say that it can't happen, that you can't ever get sick, because there are dogs and people with certain immune issues, or they're temporarily unable to battle infections because of a major surgery. So there are times when you should be considering things, but
they would be cautious whether they were prepping food for their dog or prepping food for themselves, right? The caution would be the same.
Right.
The feeding the dog is, the same cautions would apply, right?
Exactly. So, there's a reason why at least every package that I find in the store from major meat manufacturers, major meat suppliers, if you go to the Kroger store or something, they all have something on the label about safe handling practices. And it's like, when was the last time that you had to read through those directions or get some kind of degree in food science to be able to make tacos for your family and not get sick? The answer is probably never.
Never. Yep. Yeah. And I think one of the things that came out of that survey that I did that you referenced is just the idea that I don't feel safe with having the dogs eat that and then go lick my niece that came over, or having licked then the people that are around, or it's on their face. And I have probably the dirtiest, most drooliest, nastiest, dirty dogs after they eat. It doesn't get much worse than a Mastiff eating like Oregon grind, right, all over the mouth. And I actually, I don't know if you saw, but so was it yesterday? Yesterday, I think. Yeah, I was feeding Junior, and he is very spoiled, so he always likes like the last little bit of like the Oregon grind, like I hand feed it to him. So I was kneeling over him and hand fed him just a little bit, and then of course, like it was a split second, he just starts flinging his head back and forth, so it was all over me. So anyway, my point in saying that story is just that, but I survived.
Right. You're not dead from E. coli or salmonella yet.
I'm not. I managed to just clean my hands and change my clothes, and I was totally fine. So I don't mean to make light of it, but even with nasty drool faces and all of that, it's just regular sanitation. Just I make sure that I wipe them with a cloth, and I launder the cloth if it's not disposable, like a paper towel or whatever. And I've even been known to use baby wipes, just to kind of clean because they're really wrinkly underneath their chins. So, but I just, you try to keep them clean, and then you give them water, they drink, and it just kind of, goes away. And they eat outside. So I feel like nobody in my family has ever gotten sick. We've had people come over and feed our dogs with little babies around. It's to the nth degree, and nobody has ever gotten sick. So I feel like, just to the point you made, it's whatever practices you would put into place for human raw food, you would do the same for dogs. And that really should be kind of a non-issue. Yeah.
Wash your dishes, wipe down and sanitize your counters, wash your hands.
Right.
Yeah. Not rocket science. Again, there's the immune system people, but I mean, 99% of the people out there, and the dogs out there, and the babies, and the elderly people, and we've had everybody here. We've had tiny dogs, big dogs, elderly people, infants, toddlers, everybody, and no one has been sick. We have a no kisses rule at our house for 1 hour after they consume. There's a no kisses rule for 1 hour. There's nothing scientific about it. I can't tell you where that idea came from, but one day it was just, you're not giving us kisses for at least an hour after you get done. And it's working.
Yeah, I pretty much, it's unwritten, but I have the same rule. Like, no, you're not coming near me.
Oh, you just say, I love you, no kisses, no kisses.
Right. A pat on the head. Yeah.
Yep.
That's too funny. So then what would you say would be kind of a third reason that people don't raw feed?
The biggest problem,
cost and bacteria are two big ones.
Yeah, the cost and the bacteria, and then being able to effectively put it together themselves.
Yeah. Because
they hear about pre-mades, which are amazing options, and they're critical for some people being able to transition because they just can't wrap their head around the idea of feeding meat. And so when they get it and it looks like, a hamburger patty or little nuggets of food or something, then it just clicks better in their brain.
Yeah.
But the problem that some people run into is that it's expensive in a lot of cases to do pre-mades, because it's back to that cost equation. It was more convenient for you, so it's costing you more. And a lot of people then end up into, well, I don't want to do this then because it's expensive, and we're going back to one of the first reasons. But then they start considering DIY stuff like I do, and like we teach in the Raw Feeding 101 course, and that's, you're actually gathering ingredients and putting them together yourself. Yeah. And that intimidates people because, how many of us know how to feed ourselves a balanced diet, let alone our dogs, right? It's not something that requires that awful Cat Hills video, and we'll leave it at that. If you want to start Googling, regardless of what they want to tell you, you do not need to go and get a canine nutrition degree to effectively feed your dog a fresh food diet. You do not. Anyhow. So that's the other big thing for me. The third one is that people get intimidated and are afraid that they're not going to provide, I guess, and the best way to say it would be an adequate diet.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue to kind of talk about your course, which I think is a phenomenal solution to answer really, I think, all three of those, because you address all three of those in your course, the Raw Feeding 101 course. And I think the balance, I'll just say this, and then I would love for you to kind of chat about just, who your course would be for and kind of what they can expect from it. But the one thing I was going to say about the balance, I think part of the problem and I think the challenge you face as the admin for the Raw Feeding 101 Facebook group, and just the presence that you have, on the Dog Dad channel and all of that, you get questions all the time, I think, is making it simple enough so that it is accessible for everybody, for every dog owner that wants to do it, that really it should be as simple as, understanding kind of a few foundational concepts, right? The meat, bone, organs, and then you have a handful of supplements and things that you might consider adding to the food. But there are plenty of people that do meat, bone, organ, and their dogs live very long lives, and as long as they kind of keep that balance, the quote unquote balance over time, they're able to do it just fine. I think, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that's the challenge, is to make it simple enough so that everybody can both understand it, but they can take action on it. And whether they take action in its entirety or they take small steps, right? Small little efforts to get to that end goal as they're comfortable. And I think one of the things that I've tried to do is present nutrition, both my own journey with the dogs, because I was raw feeding and then went back to kibble, and now I'm raw feeding again. And I've had my own journey and my own questions and insecurities and all of that stuff. But I guess what I have found is by not getting overwhelmed with all of the information and sticking to what I do know and what I have experience in, and then little by little take little bits of new information and then incorporate it. And so I've tried to, with Big Dog Mom, offer those small things. So don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like you are going to be a bad dog mom or a bad dog dad if you don't just go fully switch, cold turkey, right, to raw feeding. But if you can do small things, right? And I think you kind of talk about that even in your course. So I guess I'll stop rambling. So what would you say, your the Raw Feeding 101 course, tell me kind of who do you think that really this is the best course for, and what can they expect to get out of it if they purchase the course?
So yeah, I've thought about this a lot, because if I have a lot of time, then I can go into lots of detail about what the course covers and what it does and all these kinds of things. And I've tried to really boil it down to, if I had to just tell somebody in like one or two sentences. And I've come down to the conclusion, and this isn't even something that I really had in mind, it was more of a coming to a revelation, that the purpose of my course and really what the purpose of Dog Dad as a whole is, and for those of you, just to make sense of that, because I know it's confusing sometimes, Dog Dad is like the official business, like the business name on taxes and all that kind of stuff. And then Raw Feeding 101, the course, is a product of the Dog Dad business. So there's that connection, that link there. But the real purpose and what I feel like I'm bringing to the table versus somebody like, Dr. Karen Becker or Kimberly Gauthier or perfectly raw some, is that my whole idea, my whole purpose is to get your dog or dogs off of kibble and onto fresh food. No, it's not, you're not going to be a Dr. Karen Becker by the time you're done with the course. You're not going to be a certified nutrition expert, any of that kind of stuff. You are going to be the same regular pet parent that you have always been, that loves your dogs, but now you're educated and comfortable enough to provide this raw diet, this fresh food diet, and then go out on your own and continue learning. So really who it's for is that pet parent out there, that dog mom, that dog dad that knows deep down, whether it's through self-revelation, whether it's through media information, whatever it is, you know that the raw food diet, the fresh food diet, whatever label you want to put on it, barf, prey model, whole prey, Frankenprey, Frankenbarf, the list goes on, that somehow that is the best thing for your dog, but you have absolutely no idea where to start. And I mean, I see it almost word for word in my Facebook group nearly every single day. And it's, hi, I'm so-and-so. I have such and such dog that weighs this much. I'm considering feeding a raw diet, but I have no idea where to start.
Yep.
Please help. That is the perfect, we'll call it the customer avatar, the perfect person that this course is for, is that person saying, oh, I'm so confused and frustrated by all the stuff I see online because there's 10 different people with 10 different answers and I don't know what to do and I feel like I'm doing something wrong no matter what I'm doing. It's for that person that just wants a simple A to Z guide that is about, I have taken you from, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just interested to, I'm 4 weeks in or more. Now what do I do? And that really is the whole purpose, is to educate you enough, make you feel comfortable enough and confident in your abilities to provide that diet, and then continue on to further education and being able to make individual choices. So much that the very last video, and I've said this several times in other things, and I laugh at myself every time that I think about it, but it's super goofy. The very last video, I'm sure that you saw.
I know what you're talking about. Yep, I loved it.
I make people, and I actually say out loud with people in the last video, this basically like a promise to don't stop here. Like, the purpose of my course wasn't to turn you into Dr. Karen Becker or Rodney Habib or Kimberly Gauthier. It wasn't to make you a raw food expert. It was to make you comfortable, confident, and educated enough to start. But now I want you to go forward and keep learning stuff and then applying that stuff to your dog, because it doesn't matter if it's me, it doesn't matter if it's Dr. Karen Becker, it doesn't matter if it's Kimberly Gauthier, Rodney Habib, it doesn't matter who it is that talks to you for how long. Your dog is going to be different than everybody else's dog, and they're going to have different needs, and the only way that you're going to be able to identify those is by continuing to educate yourself. I'm 9 years in and I still learn stuff all the time, and as the dogs get older and as they change, they need different things. Wilkins almost 9 years old and he's never had issues, but all of a sudden this year he started showing, I don't want to jump up on my couch as much as I used to, and not wanting to run as long and all those kinds of things. And it was like, okay, you're neutered young, you are a breed that has classic disposition to hip and elbow dysplasia. So we're going to start putting turmeric paste or a golden paste or whatever you want to call it into your diet. And a week later, it was like he was a puppy again. He was jumping off the ground. But on the other hand, Horace can't tolerate it at all. It immensely affects his bladder, makes him have random accidents when he's sleeping. So it's like, okay, so there's a learning experience. No turmeric for you, turmeric necessary for you. So that is who the course is for. That person that wants to get their dogs on a raw diet and a fresh food diet, but you have no idea where to start. You're confused and you're frustrated, and you just want somebody to literally hold your hand through it, because we go over everything. I tried to be simple, but I tried to not be leaving something in my mind that was critical out. So it sounds overwhelming when I say there are 70 plus videos in the course, but some of them are very bite-sized, 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes long. And the purpose of that was to make it so that you can go and look at something specific if you want to, but you can also go from video 1 all the way through to the end and not be missing critical information, like being, having to add in omega-3s because the dogs don't produce it on their own. And how do I get the right amount of bone? How do I figure out how much bone is in this chicken quarter? Those questions that we see people asking in Facebook groups every single day. And one more quick note, and I'll stop rambling here, is that on the note of being confused and frustrated because there's 10 different answers in 10 different places,
yeah.
I encourage people all the time, even though I have my own raw feeding course and I, of course, want to sell the course and keep my family fed and pay my mortgage and all that kind of stuff, but I recommend all kinds of people all the time because I believe in learning from more than one place. But what I would recommend to avoid that frustration and confusion and one answer versus the other is that at least with the transition phase, pick one, course, no pun intended, but course of action, and stick with that through the transition. So if you want to go with my course on rawfeeding101.com, then do that through your transition and then start learning more. If you want to go with, Kimberly Gautier's book, A Novice's Guide for Raw Feeding for Dogs, stick with that and then start learning something new. Go to Perfectly Rawsome, follow that guide, then start looking at more stuff. So just to prevent your own self-confusion and frustration and wanting to put your head through the wall, start with one place, get your footing, get transitioned, and then go, okay, I don't have to deal with all the messy transition stuff. Now I can just start learning from other places, other points of view, other opinions, other information that I can pick and choose from what I think is going to apply to my dog or dogs.
Right. Yeah, and I think it doesn't take that long to get really comfortable with it. You feel like, after a couple of months, I'm like a longtime veteran. I got this stuff down, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you can start to kind of branch out into other sources of information. But I think that's a really key point, which is don't overwhelm yourself. Stick to one kind of course of action, and don't feel like you're going to ruin your dog in that time, right? If you're somehow missing out on something and something else is better, well, something else might be better, but there's nothing wrong with what you're doing now. The
Dogs are resilient creatures.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think that's really, really great. I thought the course was great. I mean, very easy to follow. I think being able to kind of jump from, wherever you are, whatever specific questions you have, you can kind of get that question and then go through it. Super well laid out. And I thought the information really, like you said, from A to Z should get somebody from, I'm just curious about it to I can actually feel comfortable in the kitchen, putting together a meal for my dog.
Well, thank you. That was the whole idea.
Yeah. So the only question, so just with regard to the course, so how do you follow up with people then after? So if somebody purchases the course, do you have, I'm assuming you would recommend they join the Raw Feeding 101 Facebook group and subscribe to your Dog Dad channel for additional educational opportunities and to kind of follow along and be able to ask questions. Is there any other means or form of follow-up that you do specifically with the people that purchase the course?
Yeah, so and actually I do have a resources file, I guess we'll call it, that I want to get uploaded because once you get into the course, it's a lifetime thing. And if anything gets added to it, you don't get charged extra for it. If more videos come, then more videos come. If more resources come, then more resources come, and you have access to all of them. And I do want to upload a okay, what now resource file, I guess you could say, with, Big Dog Mom on it, with Keep the Tail Wagging on it, all these kinds of things. But I do that exactly what you're saying, is that I recommend that people join the Raw Feeding 101 group. I recommend that people join other Facebook groups, that people check out books and websites. And if people have very specific questions, like, I watched such and such video and I need a clarification on this point, we have an open, I guess you could call it, support network where you can email, which is, me that's answering you, info@rawfeeding101.com. And that's purely for people asking questions and sending in information about, I still have this question, or I was a little bit unclear, because as hard as I tried, I know that I didn't do a perfect job. And for some people, some things just don't click the same way as others. So if anybody ever has questions, they can post questions in the group, and they can email us directly at info@rawfeeding101.com.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And thank you so much for that. And so the Raw Feeding 101 course is 50% off. So whenever this gets on there, there's still a few days to get it at 50% off, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's through the 19th, April 19th, 2018. Okay.
Well, yes, for now. I am considering a very extended extension. I'm considering it because this, I think, is going to be a huge year for raw feeding just because of how much media exposure it's getting, how much people are attacking it negatively. And I want to do my part to continue to provide the information as inexpensively as possible. And so if I can continue to offer that massive discount for an extended period of time, then that's what I want to do because, like I said, I do want to sell courses. I do want to pay my mortgage and feed my dogs. But at the end of the day, the goal is to support people's dogs and keep their dogs alive longer. They're going to leave, hopefully, for your pet parents' sake. I hope that they leave this world before you do, and that's something that we can avoid short of accident or illness, but we shouldn't lose them any earlier than we need to. And if my course can be 50% off and provide that hope for somebody, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we'll keep in touch for sure. And I'll have all of the links to, so the Raw Feeding 101 Facebook group, the rawfeeding101.com, so the site where you can sign up for the register for the course. And then I'll have this in a blog post as well with a write-up and some discussion around kind of raw feeding and getting started. So Scott, thank you so much again for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to all of the Big Dog Mom community members, and just so thankful that you're here and that you're continuing to follow along. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And I don't know, Sally, I'm surprised you all survived, not like a snore fest behind me. I thought it might sound like a freight train was in the room, but
I heard him once or twice, but it was nothing but cute the entire time.
Yeah, Junior's restless. He's looking out the hall because I have the hallway blocked, so he can't get through. So he's actually
pinned him in.
Yeah, he is. But it's hot up here, so he's like, I need to go on the tile. So anyway,
thank you again,
Scott. Yeah, right.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was fun talking to you. We should do it again.
Awesome. We definitely will. Thanks so much, Scott.